start it off. There's a new note 12 for this meeting. So we had a new RFC published, and that's 8179. So that's like updated note 12. So please take a look. And you're not expected to like memorize all of this right now, but please take a look at the RFCs to understand what your requirements are. So welcome to beautiful Prague. I just want to take a few minutes to bash the agenda. First of all, as you all notice, I'm not Alyssa. So Alyssa is having a baby right now. So I'm standing in for her from the ASG. And so I just want to post the agenda. It's the same agenda posted on the website. Just want to bash it, like in case anybody wanted to add anything. So if you had a chance to look, if you line up at the mic, if you have any questions with the agenda. Going once, twice, gone. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank our hosts. It's Comcast, NBC Universal, and Checknick. So I would like to give them a few minutes to come and talk about it, and I'll just like segue onto them. So first, Andre or Glenn, go for it. Thanks.
So I'm going to attempt to give the shortest host speech ever. I simply want to say thank you very much to the IETF for letting us be part of your world. You guys do great work. You work really hard. We've got 20 years of history producing what makes the internet work, and we're very happy to be able to support the IETF through being a host. And that's it.
And I can tell you that Andre's thing is not the shortest speech at the plenary.
Thank you very much. I don't think I can beat his speech, you know, it was amazing. But as usual, I don't want to tell something about how great company we are, and I prepared something, again, silly about Czechs, just to entertain you for a minute. So I have a very short note about the language, because, you know, you are here for the first time, some of you, traveling with IETF, and you will be here in the next 2 years. So maybe you consider maybe that if you are here so often, you should learn some of the language here, the local language. And this short presentation is to discourage you doing that. Really concentrate on internet standards. That's much more useful for the human race. So Czech language, according to US Foreign Service Institute, is in the rank of the second most difficult languages in the world to learn, which I really doubt, you know, because I grew up in Czech Republic. My parents are Czechs, so I learned quite a lot. And then I had to spend 8 years in elementary school just to really drill the Czech grammar, and I'm still not very good in that. So it's really very complicated language even for us, and I'm still, you know, trying to find some new things about the language, and I still need to ask some people how something is written in the proper Czech. Why is that, actually? It's quite interesting story. Czech language is not a really natural language. In Czech Kingdom, it used to be dominant language, but still there was a lot of German. Many parts of this country spoke German for some centuries, actually. And at one point, it was at the end of in the middle of 17th century, we lost a very important battle, which was very close here in Prague, and the Czech Kingdom was attached to Austrian Empire. And Austrians, as you might know, those without kangaroos, they speak German, actually. And so they wanted to Germanize us, and they were very successful in that. And in the sort of end of the 18th century, almost nobody spoke Czech. But there were a group of scientists who decided to kind of revive this strange language, and because nobody really spoke proper Czech at the time, so they decided to take as a basis of a language, a Bible. The Bible was 250 years old at the time, and you probably know that those holy books are definitely not written with the most recent, most modern language. So basically, they took as a basis for the language something that was 300 years old, and in those 300 years old, many languages were simplified. So that's why this grammar is really horrible, very old, and you can maybe phrase it that the language kept its ancient beauty. Of course, not all words are in Bible, so many words were created after that, either from other Slavic languages or really they are really artificial. So that's why this language is really complicated. Some critics says that this language has no vowels, that we use, words without vowels, that we don't use those things. That's actually not true. We have 5 basic vowels: A, E, I, O, U, and short and long form, and 2 double vowels, O and OW. But still, if you look at some of the, words in Czech, you will see that there are nothing from that group. That's because we a little bit extended the definition of vowels, and we added 2 of them. Some people use it as a consonant, not like vowels, but consonants, but really those are proper vowels, R and L, R and L in Czech language. And with those vowels, you can create beautiful sentences, like, for example, this. This sentence is not particularly useful, honestly, but it's beautiful. In proper Czech, it's strč prst skrz krk. I underline the vowels, so you can train it for the next meeting, and we can have some contest, who's gonna, pronounce it better. We have interesting greetings. This is a very this is informal greeting, and you can tell the friends. It's for greeting and farewell, and this is particularly interesting. It's ahoy, and I took a quote from Wikipedia, so that must be true. It's a signal word used to call to a ship or boat. If you look at the map of this country, it's a landlocked country, right? All the rivers go outside the country. We are kind of the roof. They go to different seas, so we are kind of roof from the water perspective. So there are no big rivers, nothing like that. And we chose this signaling word to say hello to you, which is really quite amazing. So God knows why. I don't know. Another greeting, which is very popular, is Nazdar. And it's a short version of Nazdar Národního divadla. It's for the success of National Theatre. So whenever you say, you wish a good luck to some very special building. You could see it actually at the yesterday's party. It was behind the Charles Bridge. Looked like this. It's a beautiful building, but if you ask any common Czech what he thinks about the National Theatre, he'll just tell you, yeah, that's the over subsidized institution in a building with gold on the roof. So they don't have any really strong feeling towards that. But every time they greet friends, they wish success this institution. So, and this is my favorite sentence. You can see it when, for example, a kid goes to a school for some important exam, and the mother tells him "zlom vás," which basically means break your neck. She really wishes him to be killed, which is kind of weird. I think you have a saying in English, break a leg, right? So, but we are a little bit more violent, And last thing, which is funny, car industry really matters in this country. We are, I think, second in the world in car production per capita. So everything what's good for car industry is good for Czech Republic. And the most popular car brand is Škoda. It's a love brand. Each third car is Škoda in this country, and really Czechs love it. They know how to fix it, how to everything. So you would expect that if this is the most successful car brand here, that the word Škoda must have some good meaning, right? Something very positive. And to translate this word, it's not easy actually. There's a lot of meanings in English, but honestly, none of them is positive. So if a taxi driver will take you in a Škoda car, please don't forget that it might mean damage, harm, injury based of something and something like that. So this is our love brand. Try to imagine this in your country. And that was really everything I wanted to tell you. So now I hope you understand that Czech language and the way we work with the Czech language is really complicated. Honestly, English is fine here. And again, thank you for coming. It's your fourth time in Prague, and I know we will return in 2 years, and we are really looking forward to see you. Thank you.
So thank you very much to our host, and as a sign of our appreciation, I would like to present them a plaque. Hey, Glenn.
Yeah, I thought we were going to share. We're very sharing people.
So I want to provide a short update from the IESG. So there's also a long update that I don't want to do here for obvious reasons. And that's like loaded on the proceeding side, and it's also linked from our web pages. So take a look at it. Starting off, I'll start off with the participant statistics. So the numbers are like kind of like, ramping up like very slowly till the meeting. And now we got like a pretty good ramp up in the last few days. So this is current until this morning, right? So, and so we crossed 1,200 attendees. So about like 200 of them are like first time attendees. And so that's like very good. So we're attracting a lot of new people. And so 96 as a comparison in Berlin had 1432. So it's like a smaller number, but we are still in good shape. So, and so we had people from 61 countries attending this meeting, and the breakup is here. So I don't think you can actually see the countries here, but actually the country names are there right next to the percentages. So if you take a look at your laptops and look at them or look at it after, you're going to see it. So we updated some RFCs like that's related to process. So we updated the IANA consideration. So this is something that's very important to all of us, because like whenever we want an allocation from IANA, we have to refer to some policies, and those have been updated. And that's like BCP 26, so you can take a look at it. And we also updated the intellectual property rights in IETF technology. So this is something I showed you in the note well. So that's like RFC 8179. So that's like BCP 79 as well. And we also had this like long-standing thing, like whether uppercase must is the same as a lowercase must or not, and everything. So we've been arguing this to death over a while. So we have, that's now settled. So take a look at RFC 8174 and you're okay. And we're also starting this initiative, like it's been going on for a bit, like, Leslie's been driving it. And so this is IASA 2.0. So this is like, how do we change the administrative side of the IETF to figure out like what's the current funding of the IETF and how we're going to organize ourselves. And there was a discussion session yesterday, and you can actually join the mailing list to figure out like what's happening over there. And so some people have been always saying, right, like the IETF website looks like it's from 1980s or 90s, like depending on how charitable you are. So there's been like some work going on to revamp it to bring it to this century. So I don't know if it's like current, but it's at least in this century. So there's like a beta website up, and you can go check it out right now if like you have your laptops open. A lot of you do, and take a look at it. And yeah, we really want your feedback. So see what you think, and like what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So that's going to help like Russ, who's driving this as a manager, to like make the site better for us. You can provide comments using GitHub, using like issues over there, or like if you want the old-fashioned way, send an email to people. And these are the things I talked about. So there's like a whole bunch of things on the website. and just go take a look at them and send us a note whenever you have any questions, or bring it up at the open mic if you do. So I just want to do a special call out for running code of the IETF. So we are like based on rough consensus running code. So there's like a bunch of things we do here that's running code. And so I just want to do a special call out to them just to give them the recognition they deserve. So the one of them is the hackathon. So this hackathon like was one of the biggest hackathons ever. So if not the biggest hackathon ever. So we almost had like 200 people, like, and like almost 20 projects, and it was like fantastic. So I had to go there as a judge, and it like the quality of stuff that is done there was phenomenal. Like what people can do in 2 days if they sit together and think. So we had like a lot of work, and it's very difficult to judge. They're all like very high quality things. I don't want you to read them right now, like read them later, but like we had some awards. So some of them are like serious awards, and some of them are like just like something that piqued their interest, like so could be like a university project or like a neat name and stuff like that. So some of them are like, you know, semi, let's call it like pulling the leg, right? Like, but that's something we want to encourage. So we don't want to have like a too serious feel into this, right? But it's like really serious work. And some of these projects are going to have demos at the Bits and Bytes tomorrow. So like, please drop in and see what they've done. And the other thing is the code sprint. This is like people doing code for us. So if you go to like the data tracker, like or like tools stuff, this is like volunteers who spend their time doing like work for us. So like whenever something goes wrong, they're always there. Whenever we need a new functionality, they're always there. They make all our lives easier. So I'd like to thank them as well. So thanks to all the people who attended the hackathon and the code sprint. Yeah, I had this fantastic 7-hour meeting that day. Thank you, Russ. Ted, before you go, I just want to do like one small update. So I just want to call out this like one thing. So there was this mail sent to the IETF mailing list, and this is about like incremental deployment of IPv6, right? So like how do we get to like run with v6? And there's like a draft that's out there, and the proponents had proposed an experiment for this meeting, but it kind of came in a bit late for that to happen. But we are considering like doing an experiment for Singapore, so like expect like a bit more details on it. And if you want to help people test this, like you can join the IETF NAT64 SSID here, either now or like sometime in the future. I prefer sometime in the future because the Plenary usually like has like bad Wi-Fi and don't think it's because of IPv6. So do it sometime tomorrow or day after so we can get some numbers and we can see some bugs. So now I hand off to Ted. Thanks.
Howdy, this is just a preview of things you might want to talk to us about at the open mic. As you notice, the IEB report, which we make before each IETF meeting, is online. A couple of items from it. There are a couple of things going on with the RFC editor. The independent series editor, Neville Brownlee, is stepping down next year. And so there's an ongoing search for a new independent series editor to serve as a successor. If you have comments on that, there's a mailing list you can reach out to. We're also in the process of developing the statement of work for the RFC series editor. That statement of work is also out for community comment. Please send comments to the invisible address on your screen or the one noted in the actual IEB report. I also wanted to call out that the call for papers on the workshop on internet naming systems has been updated with new dates. A number of people commented to us that the original dates conflicted with a workshop being held in Berlin as well as with DNS OARC. So those have changed now to October 10th and 11th. The other is kind of the regular work of the IEB, appointments to the CCG and RZERC, some RFCs. There will be a prize for anybody who can take the titles of each of these 4 RFCs and turn them into a limerick in time for the IEB open mic a few minutes late. We also made a statement on special use names actually just at the close of the last meeting. and a couple of liaisons to external bodies, one to ICANN to talk about its IDN implementation guideline, and another to the Unicode Consortium to talk about one of their technical committee recommendations. Lastly, before I sit down, I want to make two personal thank yous, one on behalf of Alyssa. She invited Jorg, Eric, and Lionel to come and talk about 3GPP and 5G, and on Tuesday at lunch, they did a great job of that. I would like to express our joint thanks for that. And one, a very personal one, to Daniel Rosum of the host team, as well as to Stephanie and Alexa. As folks may or may not know, one of our AEB members, Lee Howard, was stricken earlier today with an illness and is in the hospital preparing for an appendicitis operation. And that team has been taking great care of him and his son, Will, and we really, really appreciate their efforts on his behalf. Thank you.
Alison?
Yeah.
Slide, I'll swap the slide.
Okay. So Yuri will recognize this slide because I just stole it from last IETF. But since I'm up here anyway, I thought I would mention on behalf of the Ombuds team and the ISTAR leadership in general that we have some documents that have been through some consensus and some processes that have been through consensus for a code of conduct for professional behavior at the IETF, an anti-harassment policy to support everybody's civil behavior towards each other, a BCP RFC 7776, and I, Linda Cleaforth, and Pete Resnick are your ombuds team, and if you do have issues, please feel free to talk to us. You can find us easily because we have these very vehement neon green tags on our, and they go really well with the orange this time. So that's that. Okay, so I'm also the IRTF chair, change hats. And very quick update, just a couple of minutes. I want to thank our hosts and Prague, and I suppose summertime, because I'm not sure when it last happened, but every single IRTF research group is meeting at this IETF. So that is a great turnout of research. And as news, we had a new proposed research that has started up, research group. The IRTF's process is to give proposed research groups a year to run and see if they're going to try it to pan out and be useful. And so Path-Aware Networking Research Group met this a little earlier in the afternoon. The minutes, if you look at the minutes or the materials, you'll see a history of this topic at the IETF. But this is the first time we've tackled it in the IRTF, and it may be that this will be its time. By the way, thank you to the nation we're in too. I'm a big fan of the play Rossum's Universal Robots, and thought that was a good IRTF picture. It's one of the great plays of and now I'll have to take the challenge to try to read it in Czech. Okay, and then a couple other things happened. Retrospectively, looking at the right, we had a applied networking research workshop on Saturday, and there were lots of really interesting papers and discussion, and you can just peruse all that at your leisure. And coming up still tomorrow afternoon are the next two of the ANRP awardees. They're going to be great talks, so come join us tomorrow afternoon, and thank you.
So, Ray?
Who's up first? I'm up first? Oh, okay. Am I up first? Okay. I guess I'm up first. Let's see here. Oh, that works. Thank you. And that's the end of my report. Maybe we should start over. Okay. So I'd really like to compliment and thank our hosts, our global hosts, Comcast, NBC Universal. A fabulous job. What a great social that was, and all the work that CZ Nick has done. So Jason, Glenn, Andrej, and your teams, fabulous. Thank you very much. And it's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to come back to Prague and have family here waiting for us with CZ Nick. Thank you. I want to recognize the Hilton as sponsor for the welcome reception. Yeah, they're part of our multi-year agreement with Hilton is that they sponsor the welcome receptions when we have a meeting at Hilton. And thank you very much. Michael is probably not here, general manager, but it was well done. Gold sponsor for this meeting is Akamai. They were also the gold sponsor for Chicago. Connectivity is provided by T-Mobile and Dial Telecom, and thank you. Bits and Bytes tomorrow night. Is it tomorrow night? Yeah, tomorrow night. And 5th generation A10, Comcast, Huawei, CZ Nick, and Marvell. And so you don't want to miss that. Sponsorships again. So this meeting attendance is down about 150, below forecast. Sponsorships are down 200,000 below forecast. And so the trend isn't good over the last year and a half now. And something as I go look into preparing the 2018 budget, things that I have to consider going forward. So it's going to be rather tough, I think. But we have a new sponsorship point of contact, Joe Abley. Joe, are you here? You're not here, Joe? Probably. I'm sure he's talking to a future host. Actually, a global host, I hope. Anyway, this is how you can reach Joe. There are fabulous opportunities available for Singapore. The welcome reception is still available. There's only one platinum sponsor for Singapore, and that's available. We have a gold sponsor, but there's one more left. So if you're interested, please get in touch with Joe. I'd also like to thank the Code Sprinters. These are folks who, every time we have a meeting, they're there to prepare the community useful tools. And Henrik and Robert and Russ and all those folks, thanks a lot for your work. Here are the NOC team volunteers led by Jim Martin for the Vols, and you can see about 12 folks there. Line Speed, those names probably look familiar too, and of course Meet Echo, our remote participation services folks. Great job, and thanks an awful lot for what you've done. Thursday, we have a Tech Talk. This is the typical host Tech Talk, and I think it's been mentioned a little bit maybe already. Glenn Dean is going to host this. Is going to be the moderator, and we have from Drexel and Cisco and BBC 3 panelists. So I think this is an interesting topic. At some point in time, we're going to reach a tipping point, and cable television is going to shift, I think, my view of the world to just streaming over the internet, and that's going to upset an awful lot of things. I think this is Leslie's.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have a detailed report as well, and I would urge you to go and actually read it in detail. I do want to go over a few highlights here just to make sure, to the extent possible, everyone's aware of things. So we have an outgoing IOC member who will be staying beyond the end of this meeting, but Ray has told us that he is retiring effective October 31st, 2017. And the IOC is certainly very appreciative of Ray's efforts. Ray, as you probably already know, was our first IAD. And so we will look forward to doing something a little more formal in Singapore when when Ray has actually retired, and so on and so forth. So naturally, we are looking for an interim IAD. I say naturally because per BCP 101, we have formed a committee to actually go look for a person to replace Ray, to succeed Ray. There won't be a replacement. We're looking for an interim person specifically because the IASA 2.0 work that is going on may change the shape of what the job requirements actually are. So we want somebody who can carry us through the next 12 to 18 months. But beyond that, we will see what we need. So at any rate, you can find the job description and the requirements at that link. If you know anyone who would be a reasonably good fit, do please encourage them to apply. We'd like to have a large body of candidates to select from. I want to highlight that the registration for IETF 100 will open on Friday at 15:30 CEST. If you're not sure what 15:30 CEST is, there is a helpful link to time and date. Thank you, Ray. But at any rate, an announcement will be made at that time so that you can go ahead and be so enthusiastic with your experience here at this meeting, you'll go ahead and register for IETF 100. Meetings, where to have them. I think we had started this discussion back at IETF 98, but as hopefully by now you all know, we have decided to move next summer's meeting, next North Hemisphere summer's meeting from San Francisco to Montreal, and we have moved it 1 week earlier. All of the details of what went into that thinking and why it's 1 week earlier are in the information in the announcement, so please do read that. And certainly if you have any questions, the IAOC will be up here a little bit later for open mic. And that's it. Thank you.
Kaveh?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Kaveh Ranjbar. I'm chair of IETF Trust. I'm going to give a quick update about the trust. So, as most of you know, trust is basically a vault keeping IETF property safe. If you need to read more, please check the website. Current trustees are the 9 IOC members. This is by definition, I think, from BCP 101. We have one outgoing trustee, Ray. He's leaving us at 31st of October. He's the last of original trustees who continuously served on the trust. And I would really like to thank him because I know he was instrumental in actually setting up the trust and making sure it's where it is today. So thank you very much, Ray. This is basically the update. The good thing about trust is we want a stability for trust, so less updates is better. INA domain transfer update. This is a process initiated after INA transition. It was agreed that IETF Trust holds the INA IPR, including INA domain name. The process has been mentioned multiple times. There has been a lot of communications towards both ICANN communities and IETF community. It's in almost end of the process, but there were many steps to follow. Finally, when it's done, the INA domain name will be transferred to IETF Trust. IETF trademark was recently updated, I guess, for 10 years, and also in line with work of IOC, the trust administrative and accounting support now have separate contracts, which was requested by ISAC. So admin contract is already in place, and accounting support will start 1st of September. And this is my last slide, financials, nothing out of ordinary, it's basically usual stuff. Trust doesn't have that much, it's just for basically basic operations, keeping trademarks and things like that. And basically that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaveh. Peter, can you come up?
So this is just a quick update on the NOMCOM for 2017-2018. After a little bit of fun last week, getting our members selected, we have all of the members now confirmed and seated. We have 10 voting members, 4 liaison members. This time we added an IAOC liaison. We have your chair, and we have Lucy as the past chair and very treasured advisor. Our nominal schedule looks like this. We will be announcing the detailed schedule just a little later this month and have a call for nominations that will probably start sometime in August. We are discussing at the current time exactly what our schedule is going to look like because we may try something different. Midterm steps based on the existing schedule are to call for feedback starting in October, and interviews, as usual, will be held at the November meeting unless we change how we do things. We expect to finish up in December if we're lucky. Otherwise, probably January is more realistic, particularly if we don't have any special cases like last year. And that's it.
Benoit? So I'd like to welcome our next host for the next meeting, for the Singapore meeting. So that's Cisco. So Benoit is like here to give us a preview.
All right, so let me speak about young models. Sorry, it was too easy. All right, that being said, on behalf of Cisco, I want to welcome you to the next IETF, the IETF 100. Quite a number, in decimal actually, in binary, well, that's interesting. Now, location is Singapore. We would like to welcome you. If you remember, the week started on Saturday. We had a great hackathon this week, more than 200 people. We would like to see you again in the hackathon. That's a great opportunity to do running code. So location Singapore. I'm trying to convince you to come. So yes, there will be a social. The social will be at the Sea Aquarium. And I'm framing all the arguments that I have, right? The next one I have for you is that, if not convinced yet, I even have the menu of the social event there. I checked this morning actually, and there is like the catch of the day. Not sure what it means in the aquarium. We'll see. But what I checked, I mean, coming back from the social yesterday, where there was tradition to have some alcoholic drink. Not that I care, but there are drinks over there as well, beers and wine and etc. So again, I won't take much of your time, but on behalf of Cisco, we're happy to host the next IETF meeting in Singapore. So see you there.
Sorry. And next, we would like to recognize somebody special. So I don't know if it's a surprise for them. I hope it is. So we didn't put the name in there, but you're going to find out in a minute. Russ and Michelle.
Elise, would you come up? So while she's walking up, I'll start talking about her. So Elise has been, for the past 7 years, serving the internet community, first as the ICANN Vice President for IANA Services, and then as the President for Public Technical Identifiers, which most of us refer to as the post-transition IANA. So there's some major milestones have happened while she's been in this role. The last IP4 address block was given out to the RIRs, launching the DNS root zone management system and managing the transition after the NTIA contract expired. But she did a lot before going to IANA as well. She's been in the Internet Planning Group. She was chair and co-founder for NANOG. She's been involved in the Federal Engineering Planning Group, and she's been a member of the IAB.
So we wanted to say thank you. We have a little gift and a little plaque. The little plaque says, Elise Garrett, for many years of dedicated service to the internet community, July 2017. So we're inspired by your dedicated service for many, many years. Appreciate the contributions you've made for so many years. And we're just grateful for the smooth transition that happened. So thank you very much, and we wish you the best.
That's right.
We also have a small booklet for you that I hope will make retirement nicer. If you have a few words, we'd love to hear them.
I really am surprised and quite touched. Thank you. I know many of you, and my hair is as gray as some of yours. So this is a real honor, and it's been wonderful to be part of this community. I feel like I'm stepping down with a good group of folks. Ray's leaving. Lucy's told me she's retired. Steve Crocker's stepping down from the ICANN chair, and of course, he's been a long time IETF member. And I see so many good friends out in the audience. Just thank you. It's really, really thoughtful to be remembered like this. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
So we're getting ready for the open mics. So does anybody have questions for the IAB? I just don't want to make them walk out for no questions. I can try. Any questions for the IAB? Everybody happy with the architecture of the internet? Okay, no, just kidding. No. Okay, I guess that's a no. Anybody have questions for the IAOC? Okay, IAOC, can you please get up on stage?
Please.
Hi, so.
Actually, sorry. I've confused myself out of order here. We should introduce ourselves first. It's the point of us being up here is so you know who we are. Tobias, would you like to start?
Tobias, IOC.
Ray Pelletier, IED.
Carver Reinsbar, IOC.
Leslie Daigle, IOC Chair.
Press the button.
Try again.
Lou Berger, non-com appointed.
Eric Escuela, filling in for Alyssa.
Eric, turn off your mic.
There we go, yes. John Levine, ISOC appointed.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi, so previously in summer meetings, we would hear about the the location of the November meeting of the next year. So do we know where we're going to meet in November of 2018?
So we let people know where we're going to meet as we have something to announce, as in when we have contract in hand and things are sorted. So I will say that we are not at a point where we have a contract in hand and things are sorted for November of 2018. Ray, did you want to add anything?
Just that contracting for a meeting in Asia is complex.
So it is in Asia.
It is in Asia, and yes, it's in Asia.
Yeah. Well, because we noticed that there was a switch between America and Europe for next year.
Just in the time, so that Prague is 104 and 105 is what, Montreal? Yeah. But 106 is Asia. We just don't know yet either.
All right, thank you. Anything else? That's fine. I will say something that I said to Suresh when he came up here. I think it's important for the groups to come up here so you can see who we are, apart from seeing the dots on our badge, in case you suddenly feel motivated to throw a rotten tomato or otherwise engage. But, all right, thank you. Oh, a question approaches. Randy?
Randy Bush, IJ. I just want to compliment the IOC on becoming much more open about the hotel thing. I remember when it used to be dead silence, and I understand your constraint of not wanting to announce while you're still negotiating a contract, but knowing in advance and not having these magic secrets is helpful.
Thank you. We are trying to learn. Okay, thank you very much.
Jonathan, thanks. So you announced when IETF Reg opens for Singapore. Do we know when Hotel Reg opens for Singapore?
Same time.
That'll be exciting.
It will.
And you have the
it's-
speed of the IETF network to try to,
And it's scheduled at a time in which it's people will not be in bed. They can actually make a reservation. So it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in Beijing, for example. So if you, there's still a chance.
I'm not seeing any motion on the floor. Anybody else seeing any motion on the floor? I'm not missing anyone this time. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Leslie, you had a point. So even if you have no questions for the IAB, can the IAB please come up on stage?
Finally, your opportunity to win the Limerick contest emerges.
Okay, you can stay in the back, just crouch a bit, okay?
No, we should stand together. Don't leave, Suresh. They don't have questions. This is going to be very fast. So the two people who could not be with us here tonight, Lee Howard, as you heard earlier, is in the hospital, and we also have our beloved Joe Hildebrand, who's in the Jabber room, appropriate given his background in the development of the Jabber protocol, but was not available to be with us in person. Martin, will you carry forward?
Yeah, you also missed Alyssa.
She's also in the Jabber room, although God knows why, because she's on clear liquids and waiting for a baby. But if those of you want to give a quick cheer out to Alyssa, she will hear you at the moment. If you want to give a quick clap for her. Good luck.
Yes, Martin Thompson.
Jari Akka.
Eric Nordmark.
Suresh Krishnan, not IAB.
Brian Trammell.
Suzanne Wolf.
Robert Sparks.
Mark Nottingham.
Gabriel Montenegro.
Allison Menken. Heather Flanagan, RSE.
So now that you actually see us, have any of you developed questions, limericks, or commentary for the IAB? Oh. Well, Olaf, it's a bottle of red wine if you've got the limerick.
Almost. I need a last word, so this is a challenge. No questions at the mic, that's bizarre. All these people have gone to the bar. Are they happy and gay, or drinking beer by the tray? Or is this thing at the mic just a... I need a rhyme word there, I don't know.
Well, it's a remarkable effort, thank you, Olaf, but there was a constraint actually to win the prize that you had to work in the titles of the RFCs into it, which you apparently missed completely. But we'll work on your rhyme word, and I'll ask the IAB to go ahead and step down, since obviously people are happy with us.
I'll go ahead and say that if anyone's got questions about the RFC format, I did a brief presentation at the working group chair's lunch. It's recorded. You can look at it. It was great, better than cats. You could see it again and again.
Thanks, Heather. So Heather's report is also on the plenary proceeding, so you can take a look at it. IESG, can you please come up on stage? Okay, is anybody not here? Raise your hand. Cool, okay. Okay. Yeah, so let's start. Alisa, hi. Spencer, can you start off with the introductions? Start with the introductions.
Spencer Dawkins, Transport Area Director and part of the palette of the IESG.
Alvaro Lozano, Routing.
Benoit Claes, Operations and Management.
Kathleen Moriarty, Security.
Eric Escola, Security.
Deborah Brungard, Routing.
Ted Hardy, IAB Chair.
Adam Roach, Art.
Alex Melnikov, Art.
Suresh Krishnan, Internet.
Ben Campbell, Art.
Terry Manderson, Internet Area.
Warren Kamari, Ops.
Mia Kulivin, Transport.
Alia Atlas, Routing.
So any questions? Limericks?
Since you asked, I now have the rhyme word.
Okay.
No questions at the mic, that's bizarre. Are all these people off to the bar? Are they happy and gay, or drinking beer by the tray? Or are they watching this thing from afar?
Hey! Okay, Olaf, you still don't win the prize because you didn't use the titles. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know who came first, like John or Michael. So,
Go ahead, John.
Yeah. I did.
I'm wondering how serious the IASG believes that they or the IETF should be about remote participation. It seems to me that we've reached a bit of a juncture in which the Meet Echo facilities, while anything could always use improvement, that the Meet Echo facilities are good enough that that they're not an impediment to remote participation, as evidenced by my being able to sit here and talk with you. But there are a number of things, including ongoing confusion about whether it's better to use this technique or or typing into Jabber, how the Jabber scribes are prioritized, and a number of other issues which ultimately go to how serious the IESG is about enabling remote participation as full participation in the IETF versus something that is sort of supplementary to in-person participation, will always be second class. And I'd like to understand a little bit better where the IESG falls along that set of dimensions. Thanks.
Maybe you want to go first? Go.
So we're discussing this a lot because it's important to us, but I think we have some agreement that also the face-to-face meetings are important. So we don't think that we will reach a future very soon where we don't have any face-to-face meetings anymore. I don't think the notion of having it like as second-class citizen is what we are thinking. So we continuously try to improve the experience, but it's kind of also a testing phase. So any feedback is very welcome.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that face-to-face meetings should be abolished or not become primary, although I'm aware that others have suggested that. But it seems to me we're at a stage where if the remote participation is going to work, it's going to require more attention from the IESG and working group chairs to details like queue management than has sometimes been the case in the past, at least in some working groups.
Yeah, thanks, John. Alia next, and then Kathleen.
So obviously, I mean, the IETF has been investing in remote participation for quite some time and improving it, as you say, to the point where it's really possible. The big red buttons, I believe, are a favorite of many working group chairs in order to add people to the list. I think that having the Jabber as a backup has proved extremely useful in other circumstances, and we can continue. And I'm certainly very interested in hearing feedback on where the challenges are. We've talked about the idea of experimenting with hybrid queues, but the question is how to do that in a practical fashion that doesn't detract too significantly from those who are here physically.
Leslie, would you like to talk on the same point, or
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up question for John.
Okay, go ahead. I'll hold Kathleen for a second.
Thank you. No, because in some of the discussions around remote participation, et cetera, there's the question about, well, how about those hallways? And I know that a lot of people who come to IETF meetings, well, we've always valued basically being involved in more than just one working group. And people who come also very much value the hallway conversations, the fact that you are coming and being part of a discussion with, the people who understand how this internet thing works. So my question to John is, now that you've participated in a number of meetings remotely, how do you feel about your experience and the ability to obtain any of that sort of interaction or thoughts?
I'm probably a bad person to ask, and the reason why is probably part of the answer to the question. You've really got almost three populations of remote participants. Those who are active in the IETF have been to meetings and are participating remotely for some meetings. And for this one, that category includes me. It presumably includes Alyssa if she's still listening, and Joe and some others who are clearly experienced with the IETF and clearly have been to a lot of meetings. And while I miss the hallway conversations, I'm probably less disabled by that than the hypothetical newcomer or the other two categories, because if I want to reach out to somebody specific, or reach out on a specific topic, I typically know who to reach out to and know how to find them. If someone is in more of a never participated in person or less experienced, or both kinds of categories, the presence at the meetings and the socials and the hallway conversations are invaluable, if only because they don't have the level of connection with the community that I or the other people I mentioned have. So as I say, there are two separate questions, at least two separate questions there, and I've been around long enough that I'm not suitable for answering at least one of them. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so I agree with John, and I have been remote for 2 meetings and was really glad to have that access. So I was not able to come while pregnant by doctor's orders, and then I was on leave, right? So I had a very good experience with my remote access, but like John said, I'm very familiar with all the people, and I think it's a great capability. You know, I was able to follow along with sessions, even when I had to, you know, there's one case where my session got dropped from MeetEcho, and I'm knowledgeable enough on how all the tools work, so I was able to get reconnected real quick. So I do think we're at a place where this is good. For a newcomer, they're going to miss out on culture as well and some context. So even newcomers that come to the room have a hard time getting adjusted to our culture. I can't imagine what it's like for a remote attendee. So that's a bit of an adjustment. And I thought I had one more point. It's slipping, so I guess I will let us get closer to dinner.
Spencer?
So it seems like to me that the ISG, John, it seems like to me that the ISG does have work to do on this, but I want to invite the community to be thinking about this and not just looking at us wondering what we're thinking. We have been talking on a few mailing lists, we, the community, have been talking on a few mailing lists about a topic that's come up a number of times, which was, gee, should the, you know, what do we do with remote participants' eligibility for NOMCOM? And that's a conversation the community is had at periodically kind of fits and starts for a while, and we kind of know what that conversation looks like, even if we don't know quite what to do about it. I met with Peter and with Lucy last night, I guess, and the current and past NOMCOM chairs, talking to them about NOMCOM process kinds of things. And one of the things that Lucy was dealing with was that she had a plausible willing nominee for at least one position last year on the in leadership. And it's not totally obvious what the NOMCOM is supposed to do to get feedback in that situation, but there's nothing in the BCPs that gives them any guidance at all. So I think that we've got work to do as a community, because that's a conversation that the ISG can't have in isolation on either one of those. So I think if I understood your point, John, it's that we've gotten past the technical, can you connect to the video stream level of support for remote participants, but we're kind of like saying, what does the next level look like, and how serious are we about going there? I don't think that's going to be a leap to hyperspace, but I think it's a conversation that will conclude more quickly if we start it more quickly.
Thanks, Spencer. So there's also one thing I want to add, John, is that like some of us, at least on the IESG, we thought about this very seriously. How would it look like to have a fully virtual meeting where like nobody's present? And we had some brainstorming, and Dan York has like written up a draft. And it'll be good if like, he gets like comments on it and see like kind of what's missing, what's the things like you want. And it would be like really good to prepare if there's an eventuality where you had to do something like that, or do it as an experiment. So I think that would be really good if more people look at it and provide comments. Kathleen, you want to make a follow-up point on that?
I do, yeah. If we have people that are willing to actively work on that, it would help quite a bit, because some of the IESG we tried, and we found that we were short on cycles. So, if we did a design team or something on it, it might be useful, but we need people with cycles who have energy to put into it.
Perfect, thank you. And so I know Sean was online next, then Mikhail, so I don't know who came, Fernando or John, are you done?
Yeah, two very quick
Or did you come?
observations. First, Kathleen, I'm certainly willing to actively work on this. I've tried actively working on it in the past. And as Spencer knows, we've tried looking at some of these things, including the non-com eligibility questions, since long before he was on the ISG. And that's the group of questions I'm most worried about, not only the non-com eligibility, but the but things we tie to non-com eligibility, which really have nothing to do with it, and a number of these other things about how much participation we intend to allow, and ultimately questions about what that means about fairness. There are also some questions about training for people mostly going to be remote that we might be working on if we're serious enough, or we might continue to let drift and assume that people don't come to meetings every once in a while, are just never going to get it, and therefore aren't relevant enough to for us to invest resources on. But that's the range of questions I'm interested in, and I'm certainly going to work on it. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, John. Sean, go.
Hi. All right. So in the vein that, can you hear me all?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. In the vein that, John was mentioning about remote participation, I found that in the times when I can't attend personally, that remote has been getting increasingly better and useful, as illustrated today. But one thing that I want to bring up for the IESG and the IETF as a whole to consider is adding the ability to do consensus checking by virtual hums and hands, because in this IETF meeting, as well as the more recent ones when I've done virtually, I've wanted to hum one way or the other, but if I type that in the Jabber chat room, it would, or if I try to get in line to the mic, then it de-anonymizes my opinion as well as the opinions of other people who want to hum one way or another. So that's probably an example of one of several sets of features to improve remote participation. But having it so that virtual participants can hum along with a hum button and a hum meter to make and measure virtual hums would be great. And then also a show of hands, because frequently in meetings we ask how many people have read the draft, and it would be nice to be able to indicate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Maria? No.
So, I mean, I'm looking at the Meet Echo team in the background, but there is a button already and it should be anonymous. So I think that's already there. There's no button for showing hands, but that doesn't have to be anonymous. So I think we're there already.
Oh, okay.
And
I guess
not
I don't
anonymous.
see it in my particular.
Okay, so that was suggested for a while already. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's
So
something to do.
so I have Mikhail, Tobias, Phil, and Elliot. Okay, thanks. Sean, are you done, or did you want to say something else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mikhail, go.
Michael Abramson. So I think the current set of tools here, I'm a very frequent Jabber scribe. So the combination of having someone type in who's speaking, because that's really hard to tell because people speak really quickly, gives you the slides, the video feed, the Jabber room, all in one go. It's very good for documenting. So I don't know if we can get the Jabber in real time on this screen, this kind of screen that we're seeing here with the Pac-Man thingy, because that might help actually, because sometimes people are discussing stuff there, and that might help in real time. Then I think since I do like 5 or 8 Jabbers scribe sessions a week, I noticed that different working groups have different maturity and different way they handle the Jabber room. So that's probably more a thing to work on than the actual tools themselves. It's how you use them. And there's also the problem of, do people have the cameras enabled, is the microphone working, like the maturity of people using the tools and how it's set up on their devices is something that people need to work on. I don't think the tools themselves are the majority of the problem. Until we get like a holodeck, it's not going to give you a better, like right now it's the level of technology is limiting in how people use it.
Thank you. Spencer?
Just wanted to reply to that really quickly because I think it's a good observation. Two things. One is to remind us that raising hands is more valuable than just voting. I think that's really good. And I think the other thing is the number of times, and I haven't chaired a working group. Well, I haven't chaired a working group since 2010. But even back then, we would ask the question and try to take a hum involving Jabber, and then somebody would look at the Jabber room, a minute or two later and say, now which one did they hum for? So I think you're saying that like the immediate feedback where it's like that pops up in a meaningful way, and not just me typing hum with a whole lot of M's in the Jabber room is a really good observation. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Spencer. Okay, Tobias?
Tobias Gondrom, IOC, but speaking IOC head off. I think we've come quite a long way. I still remember like 3 years ago, I did the first IETF Trust Chair presentation remotely. And I think after that, we could see like quite a huge improvement of the things. I want to mention that, I mean, these things do cost money. And at the beginning, it was quite a significant cost per head of remote attendee. So it's very nice that we now have a very large number of attendees. That kind of drives the price per head down. I think what I'm like building on what John said, the guidance I'm seeking is if you want to make this fully functional, equal to local attendee experience, we could probably pull in a lot more money to make this better. Otherwise, we are probably constrained by the budgets that we have. And this is something that the IOC cannot decide. That is something that the IESG would need to give guidance to say, yes, like push more or something, or you're happy with the current speed of development of that remote attendee experience. So that is something you would need to give guidance, I guess.
Thank you, Tobias. Okay, Phil?
I'm on a different topic, so.
Phil Hallenbaker?
In the same.
Same topic. Yeah. But it's quick.
Okay.
Kathleen, this is Elliot here. Kathleen mentioned that there's the need for help in terms of trying to figure out how to go about doing a remote-only meeting. I think it would be helpful if there were some parameters around that in terms of what questions you want answered. And I think we know some of the questions are quite obvious, but if you guys could put out a note about that, terms of how you'd like to structure that, maybe to get some volunteers.
So there's a draft, Elliot. Like I think we can send out the pointer to the draft. Like it says like initial thoughts. Like actually quite a bit like of initial thought in there. So yeah.
What I'm saying, Suresh, is ask the community for what you want and see how we respond.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's to help develop that draft further after. I mean, we've worked on it quite a bit, and it's really a very thorough draft that has hit most points. If we miss something, and other sections need to be filled in.
So the author of the draft is over there, so I'll let him chime in. Dan?
So Dan York, and by author of the draft, it was the guy who sort of said, okay, I'll write some notes around this, and then it became a bigger thing. But just to be clear about what Suresh is talking about, was the IESG had a what was called the many couches design team, which was thinking about what if we were all connecting into the meeting from many different couches. And they had a number of people who were involved in remote activities in the past, involved with that group. And it looked at what would this look like and put together a list of sort of what are the main issues, teasing it out, those kind of things. I think the general sense out of that group was that it was very hard to imagine what a fully virtual IETF meeting could really be, but it was identifying the issues and the pieces that are there. So I'll send the pointer to the 99 attendees for that, but I would also just say, to answer sort of Elliot's question, I'm not sure where that discussion should go, and I would throw it to you folks as far as saying, where's the right place to have that? There's other groups, Meeting Venue, vMeet, there's places where that could happen, but just saying it is out there, and if people want to comment, and also if somebody else wants to take on that draft, I'm certainly willing to pass the pen.
Okay, Alia, go next.
Sure, just to amplify briefly on some of the scenarios, since I was part of the design team as well. And we covered, and the draft talks about, and part of this is what's the community interest. There's a wide range from disaster recovery scenarios, you know, a major disaster hits where we would have had the site, and now we need to have some type of virtual meeting, to having partial, you know, virtual meetings involving lots of different working groups, perhaps between plenaries, the physical face-to-faces that we have 3 times a year, on up. So there's a number of different types of scenarios, and we decided, I think, mostly decided to focus on replicating the formal working group structure and thinking about replicating the formal aspects of the meeting, not the whole conversations. And we could really use help. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you on the same topic or?
Only tangentially. So
Okay.
maybe.
Okay, Phil, go.
Okay, so Phil Baker. I think I believe that it should not require a degree in nuclear physics to use the internet. And one of the problems that I'm having is, I'm fairly aggressive in deploying stuff in my house, and so I've got my 100 IP addresses in use. And one of the rules that I have is that I only install consumer stuff, and I only follow the information available to the consumer. My network doesn't work. And I cannot debug it. And there isn't any tool that I can see in the consumer space that allows me to work out what's going on in my network. And it seems to me that at the moment we have a very inward-facing culture of, okay, the rest of the world are going to all become geeks, and they're going to work out how to do this stuff, and they're going to work out how to packet sniff their networks on one hand. And then the other one is that, well, they're going to put this stuff together and it's just going to work. And in between, we have this area of, well, it's not working, and nobody will tell me why. And I don't even know which of those boxes in my network is the one that is generating infinite number of packets and spamming the network and causing it to fail. And I think that this is a challenge that we need to take on board. In the TLS session, we had an enterprise network coming along with an issue to do with management of enterprise networks. And that's a sort of input that we've had many times because, you know, enterprises, they have people whose job it is to do this stuff. And I don't think that we've got it for consumers. And I don't think that anybody is really taking their needs seriously. And if you want to sell all these Internet of Things devices to people, you know, if people buy Internet of Things device number 101 and their network falls over, they're not going to be able to buy number 102. So it's a problem that's got to be solved somewhere.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, anybody wants to take this?
Apparently not.
I can
thank you,
say
Phil.
something as a researcher, and I can say this is a hard problem. It's a hard problem to find the problems. It's a hard problem to tell the customer what the problem is. And this is like, and the requirement you set up is like a really high bar, because when your car is broken, you also don't try to repair it yourself, right? So I think we need to educate more experts in this area, and yes, we need some guidance, give some guidance here, but I'm also not sure what the request for the IESG and the IETF is here.
Well, actually, when I have my car, I can plug in the ODB2 device, and it will actually tell me what the fault codes are. I think that if people could start looking at the protocols that are coming across and asking, how do we know when these systems have gone wrong? How do we debug this network? This is something that needs to be folded into all the, I mean, maybe this is something that I should have brought up with the IAB instead, but I think that it is something that the IETF community needs to get a hold of.
Thanks, Phil. Alia, then me.
So just briefly, I've been I mean, there are more participation from some of the public interest groups. Certainly, there was a side meeting about it, and we are seeing some more participation. For those of you who remember Dallas and the van that was going by with signs trying to encourage handling better use of spam phone calls and so on, and the IETF does get some interaction, and we are really open to hearing about new work, but the community and those who are connected in need to be coming with some ideas and thinking about the space, because I certainly agree that there could be a lot of better operations and management guidance for home networks.
Thanks, Elia. Spencer, go before me.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Phil for inviting the IAB back to the stage so I didn't have to. But I think his question about that does point up that this is going to be a multidimensional kind or multi-level kind of problem that we would be looking at. That there are probably things that we need to do in the IETF. There are probably things that we need to do in the IRTF. And there are probably things that we need to do with the IAB. If we could get to the point where people knew whether to call their cable provider or Facebook when Facebook wasn't working, and who to complain to, I think that would be like the leap to hyperspace right now, or the invention of fire.
Sure. Okay, Benoit, go.
So the issue with consumers is that, from time to time, because you work in the internet, you are asked by the neighbors, the family, and everybody to be like the point of contact. Now, whenever you go to the shop with one of those person, the only thing that counts is the price, right? I've never seen one of those product which says, I'm easily debuggable. Right, this is one of the issues that we're facing here. From an operational point of view, yes, there are plenty of things that we should be doing, but at the end of the day, mainly it's a price thing. And that's why I'm scared of the IoT world, because nobody's asking, what about the life cycle of an IoT device, right? Right now, the market is about, okay, you buy it, and whenever it doesn't work, just throw it away, buy a new one. So there is a cost issue there as well.
Thank you. Kathleen, go.
I'll be really quick. So with the IoT work groups we don't have many vendors implementing, and what happens is in the vertical spaces, there's other groups that take up our standards and do the work. This kind of thing, documentation, as it gets applied to products, might better fit into groups where the implementers are.
Thank you. I just wanted to state to Phil, there is tools that exist. It doesn't come from IETF, but there's this tool called Netalizer, which is like extremely good. It comes from ICSI. From Berkeley, so it's pretty awesome. So, but I do understand where you're coming from, and I do think we can help a bit more. So please go ahead. Welcome to the IETF.
Thank you. Tara Tarakia from the Open Technology Fund. In light of the discussion about like remote participation and lowering the barrier to participation, I wanted to express my slight disappointment as a newcomer about the lack of translation at the IETF. I understand that there might be an interest in keeping English the working language, but that does not mean that the language barrier could not be lowered at the events and also for the work in between. I think the internet is a global network and it should be managed with a global mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. Michael, you go next.
Hi. Michael Richardson. So we have 3 routing ADs, and is it 4 or 5 ART ADs?
3.
3 now? Oh yeah, we 3. Okay, so we got rid of 1. Okay, so have you all reduced it to less than a 50% job, and can we fire a few more of you then, or how's it going? That's what I want to know. Are we going to have smaller IESG, more happy IESG? How's that working? Tell us.
Who wants to go first? Okay, Ben, go first.
So I think when we talk about, say, reducing our load to 50%, we create a tension there between making it so the new ADs can come on board and have their load be 50% versus reducing the total number of ADs, which makes the load go back up. Right now, I think we've been looking more at the former one, which is to make the position more accessible by cutting down the commitment to it. Now, as far as speaking for art, which has 3 ADs, our load has been somewhat cyclical, and it may be a little down now. So maybe next year, this time, we should be talking about that.
Stop writing so many documents.
Alia, go.
No, we really like high quality documents. So I'd say for routing is, all 3 of the routing ADs are doing this, are basically full time, because there is that level of workload. And we do think that there will be a non-trivial number of working groups finishing up in the next, 18 months or so, but we're not there yet. And so we'll have to see what happens and what exciting new work folks are bringing in to make that kind of a decision. But it is definitely, it's a trade-off between how much bandwidth the IESG has for strategy and steering discussions. So if you want us to spend time as the IESG thinking about things like non-com and remote participation, and oh, by the way, there's, the IASA 2.0 work going on, and how can we organize our meetings better, that requires bandwidth from the ADs. And if you lower the number of ADs to the point that all we can do is, well, the stuff that keeps us from getting in trouble, which is to say processing documents and dealing with the working groups, then you won't get that steering. So there's a real trade-off and a balance between making the position more accessible and having the ISG actually able to steer. Thanks.
Thanks, Alia. Spencer?
So I'm a transport area director, and you'll notice that that's one of the areas that only has 2 ADs now, even though I wrote the RFC allowing 3, but I'm not bitter. But seriously, so Mary and I are sitting in transport at about something like some number of like 15 to 25 hours a week, and so roughly half time depending on who's counting, and we're really trying to keep to that, even if some week we had more time, or some week I had more time, just to make sure that what we're telling people in the next NOMCOB cycle is true. I'm not seeing that we could go much below what Maria and I are doing now, at least on in transport. And I think that Alia's observation that what's most likely to suffer first is anything strategic, because there's darn little on the biweekly formal telechats that's strategic. So that's a hamster treadmill for 15 people, basically. I think that this is forcing us to learn how to involve more people. I think the transport area review team, I think the reviews coming out of the transport area haven't been as good in a long time as they are now. And that's because we found 3 former area directors to be a triage team. We didn't have that before. So we're learning how to do the job where we're not all massively, booked up all the time. We'd also like to be able to talk to members of the community and see what they think. But that's the view from in transport.
Thanks, Spencer. If there's nobody else, I would like to say something as well. So as a part-time AD myself, I'll give a big plus one to what Ben said. So the idea is to reduce the load of the AD so that it becomes accessible to more people. So if I had to be here full-time, I wouldn't be here. So I think one of the things that helps, if you're it's accessible to more people, you get a bigger pool of people to select from. And that's what you're trying to shoot for. So any reduction in load is per AD. And it also helps a little bit with load sharing. So there's times when I might go away for a bit on a day job stuff, or Terry might go away. So it kind of really helps that the number of ADs is not reduced. So just a point. Warren?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I started as Ops AD fairly recently. And I started with it being basically a full-time job, but one fairly quickly learns, how to optimize this, which bits aren't as important. What I mainly want to say is thank you very much to all of the directorate folk. It makes life so much easier to know where to focus, etc. And it's becoming manageable now.
Okay, Tim.
Tim Chang. Just going back to the earlier discussion about virtual meetings, I can't quite see how we would get away from having the regular physical meetings we have. I think MeetEcho is an absolutely fantastic tool. The fact that we're now getting recordings appearing almost immediately after the session's finished is fantastic. But I don't see, for example, how we can have a large working group or a plenary happening over MeetEcho. So I don't think it's the right tool for that kind of thing. Things like the hackathon, and you kind of have to be there to get that buzz and benefit from it. Or last night's fantastic social is, I don't know how you would have a virtual social. That would be interesting. I wonder whether we can though use the virtual tools to do more interim meetings. I was looking at the data tracker. It seems we now do 15 or 20 interim meetings between meetings, whereas 5 years ago it's 2 or 3. So do the people here think we should be encouraging, or do the ADs up there think their chairs should be trying to organize more meetings? Maybe during the meeting time here, think of a topic for their working group to focus an interim meeting on and take the pressure off having the 3 meetings a year, all the drafts get updated 3 times a year, and maybe try and spread the workload out by doing more virtual interim stuff.
Okay, thanks. Spencer, Benoit, Alia.
So if I'm remembering correctly, and people on the podium up here would correct me if I was wrong, the way we got the mini couches design team was about 5 minutes after the Zika virus scare before Buenos Aires. So it's important for us to remember that we're not talking about situations that we can choose whether that happens or not. We are already moving IETF meetings around because of travel bans. If those become reciprocal, we could end up with a large virtual meeting very, very quickly. It's important for us to remember that. If you say MeetEcho is awesome, but it's not the right answer, you may very well be right, but it's going to be important for us to figure out what right answers look like. I think that's really important to remember.
Fair point.
So Tim, I agree with you. We have to realize that the work is at different stages, at different point in time. I don't see how we could organize above virtually. It starts to be very difficult. We need to have this whole-way conversation between people who believe they have the same language, but actually they don't. Now, whenever you have a working group, then there is like the first iterations there. But at the point in time where we've got like a wiki with open issues, this is the perfect timing to do interim meetings. It could be all virtual. I have some of our working groups who are not meeting physically, but they have interim meetings and they do good work. And I'm pushing them for more interim meeting to go faster, which is a different problem.
Okay, Alia?
Yes, so I was going backwards on your points. Absolutely pushing for virtual interims when they make sense. But there's also a trade-off there because you force time zone synchronicity on them, and that has an impact as well. So I think, if you can have focused discussion on the mailing list, that's really great, but also have the virtual interims, there's an impact because people have to devote more resources to actually participating when the virtual, preparation for the virtual meetings. And it's, my sense so far is that's sustainable when you're pushing virtual interims for a little while, but then the particular working group may tire out a bit. Certainly I was pushing pretty hard for a while. We got some, and then without constant push, it does slow down. So yes, of course, the more people actually do work, the more work we get done and the faster it gets done. On the social aspects and interaction aspects, right, this is the challenge. And when we were talking in many couches about how to handle something that might look like a virtual meeting, which would not be necessarily intentionally created, right, a disaster sort of thing. But if we're trying to do something intentionally, one of the points that Simon, who deals with the MeetEcho stuff, made is to stop instead of thinking about replicating what we have in the physical space, to think about what sorts of interactions are natural in the virtual space, whether that's, various, Snapchats, Hangouts, or there's a lot of different interaction things that could be available. And some of those, here we sort of wander around looking for a good table to sit at in order to have a conversation or stand for 6 hours. But, in a virtual space, it might be much easier to pop up a discussion and have a sign saying, come talk to us if you're interested in. So there's different things one could do, but it requires thinking outside the box. But then another piece, and this is more on the outreach side, which is we have a bad tendency, I know I certainly have been guilty of it in the past, of not actually interacting with the IETFers who are local to us. To have interactions, to pull our colleagues in to the social and professional network so that they might come and be involved in the IETF. And we've been doing some experiments with that, calling it IETF local communities. There's various drafts, but we've been doing it in Boston for a year, Bangor. So there are ways that we can help bind pieces of the IETF, nodes, right, to continue to connect in. And I think we have to be pretty creative on a number of these fronts.
Thank you. Please go ahead. And,
Dejan Bogdanovic.
Go ahead.
Okay. Dejan Bogdanovic. So we have a problem with some of the documents that we are creating and how we are creating them. And this goes particularly for the RFCs. The RFCs were, okay, so we are doing more and more software interfaces, software APIs. And we are trying to put them through an RFC process. That RFC process is just too slow because the vendors will not implement an RFC, essentially a model. I'm talking about Yang models until it's being an RFC. And when you have an RFC, then you're realizing what is the problem with that model, and you are trying to see how you can iterate fastly through a model, which is essentially a software interface. And it just takes too long. So for like a basic routing model, it took us 6 years to get the one version out that people will start slowly implementing it. So from the day when it was created until it was implemented by a vendor, it passed 7 years. And that model might not be right. So we have to come up with a new idea how we can iterate through the models that we are proposing faster, and that also vendors will start implementing them, because we cannot wait. If we wait for the vendors to implement an RFC, we will not be able to put all those models together, because there are already some discrepancies in the existing models where it's not easy to put them together.
Okay, so I know Benoit has an answer just for you with semantic questioning.
No, that is not the answer, but that's a different story.
It's not the answer?
Semantic versioning is not for that. We need something faster than the RFC. Call it RFC Lite, I don't know, something that when you have a working group last call, instead of making for the working last call, say do an agreement and push it out as an RFC. Call it a different type of an RFC that we can create in a year, maybe 5 RFCs on the same model. And they will be obsoleting each other, because we have to start implementing them. And this is how we will find out if it works or it doesn't work.
So I believe that specifically in my area, we have to learn to work differently. If I speak about routing or security, we need the full spec. It must be perfect. In the world of automation in ops, we need to iterate faster. As I keep telling in ops, it's a dream to believe we will have the perfect model day one, right? So we need to update those. You were in the ops meeting where I'm presenting that we should be working from GitHub, right? We should be having the pull request directly on those models, and we should have the semantic versioning. And from time to time, we should have an RFC. Why? To explain how to use those models. And I agree that we need this process. We've been, I believe, kind of failing in the IETF because we want to have those models perfect. When I see, for example, one document routing that speaks about type def, and you want to have in there like every single type def, I'm thinking, is this crazy? Can we have one RFC every 3 months? And whenever we know about new type def, we update that. I agree with you that we have to work with automation from software, where somehow, let me try to make sure I position this correctly. Compared to some of the models where people work from GitHub in open source and just say, we did version 2, and by the way, we made a mistake. It's not version 3, and we learn, and it's version 4. So what we're doing with this Yang catalog is trying to get all the metadata for those Yang models that give us a scorecard telling this is the one that the industry is focusing on, and there are implementations, and we learn from that. What else do you have to propose a solution?
I don't have a good solution. I've been thinking about it and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. But one of the things is that we all have to tell to our, essentially employers, we have to start doing some of those software interfaces sooner, because otherwise it will not go anywhere. There are this, some of the models that are already out there, they're supposed to be working together. Once you start putting them together, they are not working. I know some of them, they're not working today.
Okay.
And it's not just a question for the ops area, because the routing area, the transport area, everybody's producing, the models. So, and unless we have, something across, then.
Are you volunteering to help, Dean, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ekar, then Alia.
Yeah, so I guess I want to plus one what Benoit was saying. They've been doing some really nice work with this GitHub semantic versioning model for Yang, and I'm hoping that they're going to pilot it and we'll be able to adopt it across the IETF. The other thing is that one thing you're starting to see in other working groups, especially ones that are really active like TLS and Quick and HTTP, is people are starting to implement specific implementation drafts. They say, this is the version we're going to all implement. And there's like a fair amount, and so you'll see substantial amounts of fielded implementations on specific IDs, even though they're pre-RC. And I think that would be much easier if we had the stuff Benoit was doing, but it's something we're already doing. So it's just a matter of people have to understand that you're going to have to get implementation experience before you ship. And that requires a certain willingness to live with, as Benoit was saying, we made a mistake and now we're going to do the next one.
Thank you. Alia?
So Ekar beat me to pointing out what HTTP is doing was doing with different versions. But actually, I think there's 3 points I'd like to make. One is, you may think about it as just, we're trying to get these models out and get folks to implement them. It's going very slow. We're trying to get them perfect. But there's a large amount of technical negotiation, because for a very long time, we have had protocols where the implementations and what the CLI looks like, management interface and interactions, have diverged drastically. And there can be really different abstractions. And so there are some things where it's much easier. BGP has a lot of similarities, but even so, there are a lot of vendor specificity, and there's a big tension between how much do you standardize and what level and how useful the models are. So I hear you, and I know it's been frustrating. One question I'd have is, is there a good way that we could encourage more interoperability events where there's sufficient industry energy and impetus to motivate the actual implementation, as opposed to people sitting on the sides and say, well, when it's ready, of course, I'm sure we'll want it, but they don't need it quite yet. And the second thing that I'd like you to think about is, how do we manage it going forward? Because I'm sure it's going to shock nobody to know that we keep adding things to BGP and OSPF and ISIS and all of our other, dearly beloved protocols. And once we have Yang models, how do we have augmentations? How do we have augmentations for the extensions as we do them, so we don't get too much discrepancy, but we still give the flexibility for the vendor variation and features that we know are necessary in the marketplace?
So one of the things was often happening during the working group last call, there tends to be significant changes in the structure. You think you're coming to an end? Let's respin it up from the beginning. And this is a problem, because the vendors will say, until it's stable, we don't want to implement it. So we have to say somehow, okay, if we really call it the working group last call, and we're saying this is the structure that it is, put it out, see the implementation, and come back.
So
It's changing so many times dramatically in the working group last calls.
So there are two things. We ask, first of all, of course, is we need more reviews. We need more people reviewing these documents. We need more people reviewing all of our documents. And that's part of, and what happens is working group last call serves as a forcing function. It would be good to maybe we could have some interoperability pieces, but there has to be the interest in force. The second thing I'd ask you is please make the clear distinction between presentation layer aspects in the models, like the like the NMDA guidelines. So there's a big distinction between presentation layer and what are the actual abstractions that are being done.
Use cases.
The models.
How you use it, yeah.
The models may look like the structure's varying, but if the abstractions that are inside and how you have to handle it is, it's a presentation layer issue. It's annoying, but it's not the same type of radical change that you're discussing.
Thank you. Okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want me to throw up the slide that you sent me? I presented it for you. But
Yeah,
if you want-
give me 1 second, Suresh. This is John Brzezowski. I actually have something on this topic, and then you know where I'm going with the other one. You know, I've interacted with both Benoit and Aaliyah. One thing that you guys ought to think about, kind of an extension of Benoit's comment about GitHub and quickly iterating. One of the things that we've looked at internally is we've looked at this notion where we can virtualize and automate, testing, right? So if you had a situation where, and I'm going to kind of resist a little bit kind of the more reviewers thing, right? Because sometimes you just need running code. You need to see what it's going to do in the real world, in real life. It might not be production, but there's no substitute for that. I can tell you from personal experience. So one of the things that might be worth considering is, as an extension of what Benoit said, can you take some of this work, drafts, models, code that goes with them, and have a virtualized environment of, some of the most popular operating systems that you can actually give it a dry run through, right? We've done that a lot, and it really, if you're looking for acceleration, that's one way, right? Yeah, that was that. Yeah. So I mean, you'll need some vendor support for that, or and frankly, in many cases, you have open source implementations that you can use for that. It's not that hard today, right?
Benoit?
Yes, I fully agree with that, and we discussed that together some time ago, and we're slowly but surely going in that direction because that's important. So yes.
Thanks. Suresh, so I switch topics, or is this? I don't know if this is an extension of this conversation or what.
This is back to a previous conversation.
Okay, go ahead, Sam. I'll go to John after.
Sam Weiler. I want to go back to interim meetings. Benoit, I appreciate your interest in pushing these. I want to see us normalize using more virtual interims. Leah raised the time zone issue. I want to see you, the IESG, and us in the community asking our working group chairs, hey, what can we make progress on in a virtual interim? Encouraging virtual interims. Experiment with the time zone problem. Maybe we have a rotating schedule of shifting 8 hours every time we do one. Yeah, exactly. But we can experiment. Same thing with the technology. If we need queue management, we can invent this technology. This is not hard. There may be process things. You may need to relax the rules on how far in advance you need to approve a virtual interim. Make it regularized. Oh, we're going to do one every other week, and we don't need to approve every one. And if you're only around 7 weeks ahead, whatever. But let's embrace trying the new technology and see if we work better using it.
Okay, Aaliyah, go.
So yes, we completely agree. That's why the ISGS issued a statement about this. I remember a year or two ago saying, you don't have, the agenda doesn't need to be posted as far ahead. We can post for a series of them and so on, because we absolutely are encouraging. I mean, obviously it depends on the area and the area director and the energy with which one enforces the concept. But absolutely.
So I think it also, many of us are encouraging them, but it depends on the working group. It's not really necessary for all working groups. And then in terms of playing with the time schedules, we'll say TEEP is the one. It's not a working group, but they had a BOF at the last session, and they're working towards a working group. They have done a pretty good job of trying to alternate the times, and you get varied attendance as a result when it's in the middle of the night for some. So, But it has been rotated and things go out on the list and minutes go out on the list and people who couldn't attend have used that as their source of catching back up. So we are trying.
Benoit?
And we've been doing that actually. It's not that we want to formalize and have like every 2 weeks, but mainly this is the reverse. I'm always asking the chairs, what can I do to help? For example, in NetMod, at some point in time, we had like bi-weekly interim meetings because we had to fix a couple of issues. We went issues by issues there. So I think this is very efficient and we should continue this.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Tobias, you want to talk about the same topic?
It's on
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
Yeah. Tobias, DOTS working group co-chair. So we actually do practice interim meetings like once between each, so about 6 weeks after an IETF, 6 weeks before. And we found them very good inflection points. And I would say the bureaucratic overhead of posting agenda, requesting it is really not that much. I'm not sure whether we could go to a bi-weekly interim meeting. I don't think there's enough energy, but we found it particularly useful, like keeping it and having these milestones by which like the different drafts are kind of crystallized again. So I think from my side, for every 6 weeks, the current mechanism is totally fine. For bi-weekly, I'm not sure, but I don't see a strong need, at least in our working group, for that.
Thank you. Warren?
So yeah, I've participated in a number of interims recently, and one of the things that makes them really nice is the people who are actually interested in the topic that's going to be discussed show up, and generally, you know, they've read the drafts and stuff, so they seem to be much more effective. What I mainly want to say is just a reminder that if participants want a virtual interim, you know, suggest it to your chair. Often it hasn't occurred to them, and it's fairly easy to set up so that we can get progress done.
Thank you. John?
Right. So Suresh, one of the things that you and I talked about was, and I do apologize, I missed the first few minutes of the meeting. I had a work obligation. I understand that you shared some information about the V6 only incremental IETF discussion we've been having. What can you summarize where we landed? I mean, obviously during the plenary here, it's still the same way it's been all week, which, you know, we kind of expected. But and I believe your comment earlier was kind of one way. So is there any thoughts on where we stand for the rest of this week and perhaps for IETF 100?
So what I said was, like, you know, I requested people to try the NAT64 SSID tomorrow and day after, and we're going to be forthcoming with information for Singapore on how we want to go about with the experiment coming up.
Will we publish that information? How far do you expect we publish that information for IETF 100?
I would say a month before, at least.
The meeting itself?
At least before the meeting. If you start now, it's awesome.
Super. Thanks.
Okay. Christian?
Good evening. Well, this afternoon I was asked to split a draft into 2 more drafts so that we have more RFC published. And we are consuming a lot of those RFC numbers. And I was wondering, what do we do to prevent the RFC 10,000 bug?
Okay, Alia, go first.
So Christian, I think what we're probably going to have to do is wrap. I think we're just going to have to start obsoleting. I mean, I want to talk with Heather about whether zeros are reserved number or not for it or not.
Okay, Heather, you want to go before everybody else?
No, not particularly, but I will. Heather Flanagan, RSC. We are very aware of the RFC 10,000 problem. If you do some math, given we do about 350 documents a year, we got a couple of years to figure it out. We have this other small project that's sort of gating us right now. It's about the RFC format. I don't know if anyone's heard of that one.
The RFC number with 5 digits?
So yes, we're aware of it. We will be working on it. We have spent some programmer time on it already. I'm not particularly concerned about fixing it before it becomes an issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nobody else? Okay, I thought I saw Bob Briscoe at the mic, but he seems to have vanished, so I think it's okay. So, going once, going twice, going thrice. Thank you very much. So we give you back half an hour of your life to do. Thanks, sir. Yay! That's it, folks. Party's over. Other party's getting started.
Maybe 6 for the RFC numbers.
Thank you, Adam. Happy birthday to you.